Life is not an accident, nor is it a random sequence of events. It is a divine deposit, a purposeful investment from the Creator Himself. Every breath you breathe, every opportunity you encounter, and every ability you possess has been intentionally placed in your hands by God. He has entrusted you with resources far beyond the physical: time, talent, influence, and spiritual gifts, and He expects you to manage them wisely. You are not the owner, you are the steward, and stewardship means responsibility. It means understanding that what you have came from God belongs to God and is to be used for God. When we see life as a gift, we are grateful, but when we see life as an investment, we become accountable. God didn't just give you life to exist. He gave it so you could expand His purpose on the earth. He placed you here with a mission, not just to make a living, but to make a difference. He designed you with specific strengths that no one else has, and He expects a return on His investment in you. Just as a wise investor expects profit from what he sows, God expects fruit from the life He's entrusted to you. Think about the parable of the talents. The master gave his servants resources according to their ability, then left them to manage it. When he returned, he didn't ask how comfortable they were. He asked what they had done with what they were given. That same question echoes in your heart today. What are you doing with the life God has loaned you? Some people bury their gifts because of fear, insecurity, or complacency. They let opportunities pass, thinking someone else will do it better. But God didn't give your purpose to someone else. He gave it to you. And one day, He will call you to account for how you used it. The truth is, life is not measured by duration, but by donation. You may live 70, 80, or 100 years, but the real question is, how much of that time was invested in something that mattered? Time is one of the most precious currencies of life. Once it's gone, it never returns. Every day that dawns is another deposit from God, a fresh chance to invest in what carries eternal value. Your talents are not accidental. Whether you sing, teach, lead, build, or encourage, those abilities were placed in you for divine purpose. Too often, people look at their skills as tools for personal gain, but God sees them as instruments for kingdom growth. When you use what He gave you to uplift others, serve your community, or advance His truth, you are multiplying His investment. Even your struggles are part of that investment. The challenges you face refine your faith, strengthen your endurance, and deepen your compassion. God doesn't waste pain. He converts it into purpose. What you learn in hardship becomes wisdom you can share with others. That's how your life begins to compound value, not through ease, but through faithfulness. So understand this. Your life is not random, and your gifts are not optional. You are a manager of divine resources. Every moment counts, every choice matters, and every blessing carries a responsibility. When you start seeing yourself as God's investment, you'll live not just to survive, but to multiply what's been placed in your hands. Every person lives life in one of three ways: wasting it, spending it, or investing it. These are not just actions, they are attitudes toward existence. To waste life is to drift through it without direction or discipline, to let moments slip away without meaning or mission. It's when days are filled with activity but empty of purpose. You wake up, go through routines, chase distractions, and end the day no closer to who God designed you to be. Wasted life happens when we live on autopilot, when comfort replaces calling, and pleasure replaces purpose. You may have motion, but no progress. You may be busy, but not fruitful. That's the tragedy of wasting life. It looks full on the outside, but it's empty on the inside. Then there are those who spend life. They don't waste it in laziness, they pour it out, but for the wrong things. They invest their energy, their dreams, their emotions in things that only last for a season. They spend life climbing ladders that lean against the wrong wall. They pursue success without significance, gain without gratitude, and pleasure without peace. To spend life is to live for the temporary, to chase what glitters instead of what's gold. It's like pouring water into a bucket with holes. No matter how much you pour, it never fills. Many people spend their entire lives trying to achieve, accumulate, or impress, only to discover that the things they fought for couldn't satisfy the soul. They had ambition, but not alignment with God's purpose. But then there are those who choose to invest life. These are the people who understand that life is more than a moment. It's a seed. They plant their time, their talents, and their treasures into soil that produces eternal fruit. They live with purpose, direction, and faith. To invest life means you don't just exist, you contribute. You sow seeds of love, service, and truth, knowing that what you plant today can bless generations tomorrow. Investing life means you see beyond yourself, beyond what's easy, comfortable, or popular, and you align every choice with God's eternal agenda. When you invest your life, you think long-term, not just in years, but in eternity. You measure your success not by how much you have, but by how much you've given. Every prayer you pray, every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every sacrifice made for God's glory, those are deposits that yield eternal returns. Investing life means you are intentional with your moments, careful with your motives, and consistent with your mission. It means you take what God has given you and multiply it for His kingdom. The difference between spending and investing is direction. When you spend, you consume. When you invest, you cultivate. Spending looks at now, investing looks at forever. Life becomes powerful when it's placed in the right hands, when your days, decisions, and desires are surrendered to God's will. That's when ordinary moments become eternal movements. Each sunrise gives you a choice: waste, spend, or invest. You can waste life in apathy, spend it on yourself, or invest it in something that outlasts time. The wise know that life invested in God's purpose never loses value. The world measures success by what you gain. God measures it by what you give. When you invest your life wisely, you leave behind more than memories. You leave a legacy that speaks long after you're gone. Every day, people invest their hearts, time, and energy into what they believe will bring them happiness, success, or fulfillment. They chase after wealth, fame, influence, and comfort as if those things can secure their future. But the truth is, earthly markets always crash. No matter how high they rise, they eventually fall. The things of this world are temporary. They fade, they break, they lose value. What looks secure today can disappear tomorrow. People spend years building reputations, businesses, and possessions, only to discover that these things cannot outlast time. The applause fades, the money runs out, the body weakens, and the spotlight moves on. That's why investing in earthly markets, the markets of status, pleasure, or possessions, always leaves the soul bankrupt. The world offers a false sense of security. It tells you that if you have more, you'll be satisfied. If you're recognized, you'll be fulfilled. If you reach the top, you'll have peace. But every earthly achievement has an expiration date. The cars rust, the houses crumble, and the trophies collect dust. Even human praise is fickle. The same crowd that cheers you today can turn away tomorrow. The truth is, anything that depends on the world's approval will never stand when the storms of life come. That's why Scripture reminds us not to store up treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. It's not because material things are evil, but because they're unstable. They were never meant to be the foundation of your life. In contrast, there's another kind of investment, one that never loses value and never crashes, the investment in eternity. When you pour your life into things that please God and bless others, you're investing in a market that will never decline. Heaven's economy doesn't fluctuate with the world's trends. Every act of faithfulness, every prayer, every sacrifice made in love becomes an eternal deposit that no one can take away. When you give of yourself to serve, forgive, teach, encourage, or lead others closer to God, you're building a portfolio that time cannot erase. The interest on that investment keeps growing, not just in this life, but in the life to come. The difference between earthly and eternal investments is perspective. Earthly investments focus on what benefits you now. Eternal investments focus on what glorifies God forever. The first feeds the ego, the second fulfills the soul. The first is about accumulation, the second is about multiplication. When you invest in eternity, you recognize that every resource, every relationship, and every opportunity you have is a tool to make an impact that outlasts you. You begin to live with vision, not for applause, but for purpose. So ask yourself, where is your heart anchored? Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If your treasure is tied to the temporary, your peace will always be fragile. But if your treasure is rooted in eternity, your joy will remain unshaken. The world's market is unpredictable, but heaven's return is guaranteed. That's why wise believers shift their investments from what fades to what lasts, from the material to the meaningful, from the fleeting to the forever. When you start investing in eternal things, your life gains stability, your spirit gains peace, and your legacy gains value that time cannot diminish. Every day, through every decision and every action, we are making deposits into the account of our lives. Whether we realize it or not, we are all investors not just of money, but of moments, attitudes, and choices. Every word we speak is a seed. Every action we take is an investment. What you choose to say, do, or even think doesn't disappear when the moment passes. It leaves a mark, either building up or tearing down, adding value or creating loss. The life you live today is the sum of the deposits you've made over time. Just like a bank account grows through consistent saving, your spiritual and moral wealth grows through consistent obedience, kindness, and integrity. When you choose to forgive instead of holding a grudge, that's a deposit. When you show kindness to someone who can't repay you, that's another deposit. When you stay faithful in prayer, serve quietly, give generously, and love unconditionally, you're adding to a balance that will pay eternal dividends. Many people overlook small choices because they seem insignificant, but God sees every detail. He measures not just the size of your actions, but the sincerity of your heart behind them. What may seem small in your eyes, a comforting word, a moment of encouragement, a helping hand, can be a powerful deposit in someone else's life, one that ripples far beyond what you can see. The danger is that we sometimes make withdrawals without realizing it. Every time we choose bitterness over grace, selfishness over service, or pride over humility, we're withdrawing from the account of our influence and purpose. Words spoken in anger, time wasted in distraction, and opportunities ignored all cost us something. The more careless we are with our moments, the more we deplete what God has entrusted to us. That's why Scripture urges us to walk wisely, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Every day presents choices that either increase your spiritual wealth or drain it. God designed life in such a way that our deposits don't just affect us, they affect others. A parent's faith deposits hope in their children. A leader's integrity deposits trust in their followers. A friend's loyalty deposits strength in someone's weakness. The beauty of these divine deposits is that they multiply. What you sow in love grows in someone else's life, and what they sow in return continues the cycle. That's how God's kingdom operates, not through single moments, but through a continual exchange of faithfulness. When you begin to see every choice as a deposit, your perspective changes. You stop wasting time on things that don't build value. You become intentional about your words, your relationships, and your priorities. You start asking not, what do I get from this, but what am I adding through this? That's the mindset of an investor, someone who understands that the greatest returns come from consistency, not convenience. At the end of your life, the balance of your spiritual account will reveal where your heart truly was. Did you spend your days chasing profit or purpose? Did you leave behind a trail of division or a legacy of love? Every deposit you make today is shaping that outcome. So, invest your time wisely, choose your words carefully, and let every action become a deposit that reflects the character of the one who entrusted you with life itself. In a world obsessed with achievement, accumulation, and applause, it's easy to measure success by the wrong standards. Society teaches that success is about how much you own, how many people know your name, and how high you've climbed. But true success cannot be measured in possessions, popularity, or position. It's measured in purpose. Life loses its meaning when it revolves only around self. You can have everything the world calls valuable and still be empty on the inside. There are people with overflowing bank accounts but bankrupt souls, people who live in mansions but have no peace, people surrounded by admirers but lonely in spirit. That's because fulfillment doesn't come from what you hold in your hands, but from what you hold in your heart. Focusing on purpose means living for something bigger than yourself. Possessions are temporary. They can be lost, stolen, or destroyed. Purpose, however, is eternal. It gives meaning to your days and direction to your decisions. When your heart is anchored in purpose, you stop chasing things that fade and start building things that last. Purpose drives you to use your gifts to bless others, not just benefit yourself. It shifts your focus from personal gain to kingdom impact. You begin to see your job not just as a paycheck, but as a platform to serve. You view relationships not just as connections, but as divine opportunities to love, encourage, and influence. When possessions define success, life becomes a competition. You start comparing, envying, and striving for more, but more never feels like enough. The more you get, the more you want. The higher you climb, the emptier it can feel. But when purpose defines success, life becomes a contribution. You don't live to outdo others, you live to outgive yourself. You no longer measure your worth by your wealth, but by your witness. You begin to ask different questions, not what can I gain, but what can I give? Not how can I be served, but how can I serve? That's when life becomes rich in the truest sense. Every possession you own is a tool, not a trophy. It's something God allows you to manage for His mission. The car, the house, the skills, the influence, all of it is meant to advance something greater than comfort. When you treat possessions as your purpose, you lose both. But when you treat purpose as your possession, everything else finds its rightful place. God never said wealth was wrong, but He did warn that wealth without wisdom can trap the heart. It's not about having things, it's about things not having you. Focusing on purpose also changes how you face challenges. When you live for possessions, trials feel like loss. But when you live for purpose, trials become lessons. You start to see pain as preparation and setbacks as setups for something greater. Your purpose gives you perseverance. It reminds you that even when circumstances change, your calling doesn't. Ultimately, success is not about how much you collect, but how much you contribute. It's not about the size of your house, but the strength of your heart. It's not about what you build for yourself, but what you build in others. True success leaves fingerprints of faith wherever you go. A trail of lives touched, hope restored, and hearts inspired to believe. When you live for purpose instead of possessions, you may not always have more, but you'll always mean more. To invest in what matters most is to align your heart with the things that carry eternal weight. Life is full of distractions that pull us in every direction: work, relationships, ambitions, and responsibilities. But at the core, what truly matters is how we connect with God, how we serve others, and how we use what we've been given for a purpose greater than ourselves. When we invest in what matters most, we begin to measure time differently. We stop counting minutes and start making moments count. We stop asking, how much can I get out of life? And start asking, how much can I put into life? One of the greatest investments you can make is in your time with God. Prayer isn't just a ritual, it's a relationship. It's where your spirit gets direction, your heart gets alignment, and your mind finds peace. When you pray, you're not wasting time, you're strengthening the foundation of your faith. The more time you invest in prayer, the more clarity you gain about what truly matters. It's in those quiet moments that God reminds you of who you are, what you're called to do, and how you can make an impact. Prayer transforms your perspective, helping you to see people not as problems, but as opportunities to show grace. It teaches you to trust the process even when you can't see the outcome. Investing in truth is equally essential. In a world filled with noise, opinions, and misinformation, the truth of God's Word becomes an anchor for your soul. When you fill your mind with truth, you guard your heart against deception. You learn to see through false promises and fleeting pleasures. The more you study truth, the more you begin to live it. It shapes your decisions, your relationships, and your values. Truth doesn't just inform you, it transforms you. When you live by truth, your life becomes a reflection of God's wisdom in a world desperate for direction. Then there's the investment of service. Every time you help someone, encourage them, or stand beside them in their struggle, you are planting seeds of love that God Himself will water. Serving others doesn't diminish you, it multiplies you. The more you give, the more God refills you. When you serve, you're not just doing good deeds, you're revealing God's heart. You're showing that greatness is not found in how many people serve you, but in how many people you serve. Finally, investing in faith is what ties it all together. Faith allows you to trust that even when you don't see the harvest, your seeds are still growing. It's believing that your efforts, your prayers, and your sacrifices are never in vain. Faith helps you hold on when life feels uncertain. It reminds you that everything you give to God comes back multiplied, not always in material form, but in peace, joy, and purpose. When you invest in prayer, truth, service, and faith, you're building a foundation that storms cannot shake. You're putting your time, energy, and heart into things that outlast this world. The return